All right, well, I think we are ready to go. Maria, you want to take it away?
Sure, absolutely. Thank you so much for joining us today. Hopefully you've tuned into some of our other webinars. If not, we are posting those on our YouTube page. And we really recommend that you check out the December 7th webinar if you don't have time for anything else, because it really is pretty comprehensive over both the regular empty and dry campaign, and then the organics campaign, and then the pivot that we made to the empty and dry campaign from our mid-campaign research that gives you the option to use a shake it out message instead, in case you're getting feedback from the public that they think you're directing them to wastewater. So there's more on that in that specific webinar. But today we are talking about the pilot program. So we'll get into more into what that is, but we thought it was a great opportunity to have some cute pictures of our mascot Turner, the recycling turtle, in a pilot's hat. Next slide. So we're just going to go over this. I think this will go really quick, but we're going to just go over some of the goals, the logistics, basically how we did this measurement, and then what the results were, and then the resources we have available for you. Next slide. So it starts with measuring the recycling and measuring the trash, as I like to say. So, this is the version from before I made my final edits. So basically, if you go back to our RFP for this contract, we had specifically said that we wanted measurable results for the campaign. And what we were seeing and had heard from folks who'd been around CalRecycle back to when it was the Waste Board and DOR were separate departments, we heard that there had never been a campaign that had actually impacted what was being thrown away and what was recycled, at least in terms of any measurement that we'd done, and certainly not in our waste characterization studies. So we really wanted to make sure that this campaign was impacting not just having the impressions that you get in a normal advertising, education, and outreach campaign, how many people drove by a billboard, how many people engaged with or saw a post or an ad, but actual change to what gets thrown away and what gets recycled and how it is recycled, if it's recycled correctly. So we first established a recycling baseline in the two communities. And if you have questions about why these specific jurisdictions were chosen, it was basically who was available, and in a general, in two categories. We wanted a Southern California category, since the bulk of Californians are in the Southern California area and the largest amount are in Los Angeles. So we thought it was really important to have at least one of the pilots there. And then we wanted something that was representative of a smaller community that was perhaps in the Central Valley. So we started reaching out to a couple of other communities, but we ended up finding that Sacramento had the most willingness and ability to get it done in a short period of time. So they were chosen for those reasons. And then we established a baseline for what was being recycled and what was being thrown away also. And then we did our behavior change, education and outreach campaign, advertising that you have available on our iRecycleSmart.com page. And RSC, Runyon Saltzman, our advertising agency, collaborated with CalRecycle to create the marketing materials, including the turtle and the videos and some of the other assets we'll show you today. And then we tested the behavior change. We tested basically what was in the trash, what was in the recycling bin, and how clean the recycling bin was. So that was done by Cascadia, who has done most and maybe all of CalRecycle's waste characterization studies. So I'm not aware exactly, but they've done most of ours in recent years. And so they didn't do it. It wasn't a waste characterization study, but we wanted to ensure that we could say it was done at the same level of professionalism as other waste characterization studies that we had done. And while we were only measuring certain parts of it, of the trash basically and recycling, it was at least something that could in some ways be compared to the other standards that we hold. Next slide, please. So the goals of the pilot program. This is, we want to talk about why the pilot matters. So before we even put out an RFP for this campaign, we queried jurisdictions in the north. We did a focus group of jurisdictions, and then we did a focus group of jurisdictions in the south. And I say we, I wasn't here yet, but Christina was right at the lead of that whole effort. And most of the jurisdictions reported that most of their marketing campaigns did not change behavior. They didn't see a change in what they're recycling in the trash from what they were putting their money into. But there were some that said they did see, I think there were 2 that said they did see a change, and it came specifically from using something called community-based social marketing. So part of that process is measuring the impact of the messaging. And by doing that, it saves time and money, because you're not putting out a bunch of assets and then, not knowing until maybe the end or maybe ever if it actually had an impact. So there's a number of aspects of community-based social marketing, and you can get it more into that in our December 7th training. But this was just one aspect of it, and it was an important aspect. Community-based social marketing was in our RFP, and the specifics of measurable behavior change was in our RFP as well. So this was just a part of what we had planned to do, and really the most reliable way of carrying out what our RFP asked for. So the educational teams, your educational teams, we recommend that you partner with your waste managers. We know that many of you wear multiple hats in your organization, so that might be very easy for some of you, but we do recommend that to whatever degree you can, that you partner with them to understand what the problems are first and foremost, and then what the impact is once you're putting out messaging in different platforms. So our goals were, number 1, to increase the proportion of what we are calling empty and dry recyclables. So essentially the main goal for this campaign, for this portion, the recycling, not the food recycling, is to cut contamination. And you probably all know that contamination can mean several things, but the number 1 part that we were talking about in this campaign is basically liquid or food, or what we call gunk, on the recycling that goes in the bin that ends up contaminating, spilling over, recycling in the whole truck, and can be really problematic. And then on the LA pilot, we decided to measure the proportion of recyclables placed in the recycling bin, the capture rate, by driving people to iRecycleSmart.com. Now, we didn't do a campaign that was specific to LA's rules, because this pilot is to measure communication assets that we then put out to the entire state, and we have available to the entire state. So we chose to use the campaign to drive people to the iRecycleSmart.com website, where people can find their local rules. And if you haven't been there, we strongly recommend you go. There is one page that is about what can I recycle, and there's another page that you can find from that page, and also from the homepage and the navigation bar, that drives people to their local recycling rules. So that was what we were testing in Los Angeles. And overall, we wanted to understand how our educational marketing materials, basically our advertising assets, were how they were impacting recycling behaviors. So for the logistics, I am going to pass this to Christina to get into some of the specifics.
Great, thank you. Okay, so as Maria mentioned, we were in two communities, Sacramento and LA. You can see on these maps here, these little red drop pins tell you, give you kind of an idea of the neighborhoods that we were in. So Sacramento and LA. And in these two areas, we were really looking for an opportunity to target areas that had high levels of contamination, so that we could really see, we needed to have a larger percent of contamination to really see a change in movement. So we targeted those particular communities specifically. So LA and Sacramento County, we basically had 2 days of sample collection with 6 routes in total for both studies. This was the pre-measurement. And the sampling collection was the same. The post-measurement was the same for each study area. So we returned to the same 6 routes. Each day, 1 route was selected as the control route and 1 as the test route. Test routes received the marketing materials with our campaign messages. And again, community-based social marketing is really about identifying what the specific barriers are for people to recycle properly and targeting those barriers with messages so that they can overcome. So that's really what we were trying to do in these different neighborhoods. So when our Cascadia team would go out, they would drive the selected route. They would select a random household. They would collect the materials that were set out in the bins. In this case, we did both the recycle bin and the trash bin. We did not do the greens bin. But part of the reason for that, especially in LA, is we wanted to see the percent of materials that might move from the trash bin into the recycling bin that were truly recyclable, or vice versa, what would be moving from the recycling bin that was contamination into the landfill bin. So that's why we measured those 2 curbside bins. The team would label the sample, wrap them up, transport it to a sorting location, sort each sample, and then weigh each sample. So that's kind of the logistics of how the measuring was conducted. We do have Dieter from Cascadia on here as well. And at the end, we'll take some questions. There may be some detailed logistics questions or about the marketing as well. So make sure you're teeing up those questions. Okay, so what exactly did we message? What were the marketing materials? So RSC partnered with us to create these pilot materials. We did 30, 15, and 5-second videos that were targeted by neighborhood. With digital marketing, you can get really precise by neighborhood. So that's what we did. We also did digital display banners. We did social media, so Instagram and Facebook. We did Nextdoor social posts. Nextdoor, we've seen just a lot of good traffic. A lot of people are talking about what's happening in their neighborhoods and asking questions about recycling and trash. We also canvassed with 5,500 door hangers. And then we also did 5,500 direct mailers as well. So this gives you kind of a picture of the type of materials that we were sending out. We were specific, one of the principles of community-based social marketing is to really show people that they're a part of a community and that community is modeling the behavior that you want people to adopt. So in this case, you can see down here in the bottom, we've got Los Angeles Recycle Smarter. We did Sacramento Recycle Smarter. Californians recycle smarter. So really trying to target and show people that this is something we're doing together, so that if people were not doing this, that they would adjust their behavior to match what the group is doing. That's one of the principles of CBSM. Okay, so we spent just under $65,000 for this pilot. Now, again, this was a really targeted pilot, and this was in two cities over multiple neighborhoods. We did a 5-week flight from in January through February. We did English and Spanish. And we did 2 postcards, 1 door hanger. We also did the digital and social ads and the campaign videos. During this time, the plan generated 6 million impressions, meaning that people saw our campaign materials 6 million times. We had 12,000 clicks through to our campaign content, and we had 97,000 website page views. So we had 12,000 people get to our website through these campaigns, and then 9,700 different views on the website. We also had 6,500 new users, meaning we were not just getting repeat users who were looking at the same content over and over again. Of all of these different channels, we saw the best click-through rates through Facebook and Instagram. We do play our videos on those mediums as well. The 30-second videos were the most effective, and they had a better click-through rate than the 15 or 5-second ad. Okay, so here are the results of the pilots. Okay, so in Sacramento, just kind of as a little bit of a recap, the goal was to increase the empty and dry recyclables in the recycling bin. So essentially to reduce contamination in the recycling bin. So the proportion of empty and dry increased for both the control and the test group, but the test group, you can see the orange is the post campaign. The test group had a larger growth by 11 percentage points. So essentially that means there was a nearly 25% increase than the control group. So in other words, the targeted messaging did impact behavior, even though the time frame that we ran this messaging, 5 weeks, was relatively short. Okay, this chart here, let me just kind of break it down for you. Over here on the left, we have the pounds per household. So you can see that on the left here, we have pre-campaign and we have post-campaign. The brown is other materials. So these are not recyclable materials that were in the recycling bin. Contaminated recyclables started at about 9 pounds per household, and they dropped down to about 7 pounds per household. The percentage of blue, which is the clean and dry, even though this is a slope, it's actually, this is a larger amount of material at the end of the campaign than at the beginning. It slopes because we're kind of layering the data here. So in short, the amount of material between the pre and post measurement was about the same. The carts were weighing about 17 pounds. We did increase the proportion of clean material, which is great. We saw the biggest increases on folding cartons, recyclable paper, and glass. And we saw the biggest decrease in dirty cardboard. And it appears that people put cleaner materials in the bin, more cleaner materials in the bin than they did before. So all really, really great, great results here. Okay, this is a little bit more specific of the types of materials that we measured. So on the left, we've got these orange lines. These are the materials that got dirtier. On the right, we have our green materials. These are those that got cleaner. So overall, we see that there are more green lines on the right, meaning more items got cleaner than got dirtier. There's a couple of outliers here. We have our gable top containers, our HDPE bottles, and packaging got dirtier. It's difficult to kind of identify why. When we talked with Cascadia and kind of drilled into this, one of the things that that Dieter from Cascadia mentioned is that, you know, when we have pilots, we're dealing with enough of a sample size to give us credible data, but also small enough that sometimes one home or two homes can actually skew a study. So if we had, you know, a couple of homes that happen to have really dirty HDPE bottles and packaging and gable top containers, that could have skewed these results. But because we're seeing most of the materials move into cleaner, that it's pretty safe to say that that the messaging was effective and encouraging people to empty and dry and shake out their recyclables. Cardboard specifically, we saw that in January, cardboard 50% was clean and 50% was dirty. But in April, we saw that that moved to 70% was clean and 30% was dirty. So we did see that 20% increase in clean cardboard, which is very exciting. Okay, the findings in LA, the goal again, let me just remind, is to increase the proportion of recyclable materials in the recycle bin. So this is the capture rate, or you could also call this like a proper sorting kind of an examination. Now, we ran the same messaging, which is primarily focusing on empty and dry and reducing contamination. But we did include our website on all of that messaging. So we wanted to test kind of the secondary messaging of driving people to the iRecycle Smart site to see how effective that is on changing behavior. So we saw that the recyclables that are put in the recycling bin actually increased for both the test group and the control group. And actually for the test group, it was a little bit less than the control group here. What's really interesting is in these results here, and again, we've got the same kind of graph, the amount of the recyclables in the recycling bin increased. So let me just break that down for a second. So before the campaign started, this light blue section is the recyclables that are in the recycling bin. And we had on average about 50 pounds per household per month of recyclables. At the end of the campaign, it averaged about 65. So what that means is between the beginning and the end of the pilot, people increased the amount of recyclables in the recycling bin by about 15 pounds. What's interesting about that is you might think, oh, that means that people were moving stuff from the garbage into the recycling bin that's truly recyclable. Except if you look at this bottom teal section, that actually represents the recyclables that are in the garbage, and that remained pretty static. So what could cause more recyclables in the recycling bin without moving them out of the trash bin? So it's difficult, again, to give anything conclusive, but what we can do is speculate a little bit. One is there might be materials like CRV that may have been taken to recycling centers that were then put into a curbside bin, especially glass that could definitely shift the weight. The other thing that could have happened is that perhaps on the days that we collected, that there happened to be less scavenging. You know, we know that in some neighborhoods we see the homeless or others who will go through a neighborhood after all the bins are set out, materials are taken out of it. So maybe on the pre-campaign test, we hit them on a day where they had removed some of the recyclables, and on the post-campaign day, we hit on a day that they did not remove recyclables. So again, not really anything concrete that we could say, but these are the different variables that we've considered as we've analyzed these results. So here's the bottom line. In both jurisdictions, behaviors changed in the right direction. So our conclusions are that the empty and dry messaging does work, that targeted community-based social marketing does change behavior, these messages that are trying to identify what the barriers are and properly educate on emptying and drying and getting people to the website for more info, that type of strategy is effective. And then the other thing is, we really wanted to test closing the loop of communication between those who are doing recycling education and those who are studying trash and managing it. So at the local level, you often have multiple people who are doing these different tasks and may or may not have a lot of communication or strategy that they're working together on. So we really wanted to kind of demonstrate that if we can get a pilot that shows the effectiveness as close to the messaging going out as possible, then that then allows the marketing team to continue to strategize or to pivot. If we had seen a major, decrease or even just static, we would identify quickly, this is not effective. And we may want to pivot. So that, feedback loop between the waste managers, recycling managers, and the marketing team, the local recycling educators is a really key relationship to develop there. So that, in short, is our pilot. And we do have, we will be sending this out to our email list so that you have the presentation. We'll also have this summarized in a Word document for you. And we will have the recording of the webinar as well. And I'm going to go back to our chat and open that up. And I'm going to stop sharing my screen so we can just see ourselves here. And I just want to open up to, if you would like to ask a question, feel free to directly message. And I am going to unmute Maria so she can jump in here. Okay, there we go. And I don't see any questions coming in. We've got quite a group here, so thank you so much for attending. Any questions? Okay, I do. If you would like to be added to the email list, please go ahead and drop your email into the chat and we'll get those written down for a distribution on this. Thank you guys so much for attending. Really curious, has anyone done any pilots themselves? Have they been effective? What drew you to want to listen to our pilot? Would love some questions and feedback.
One other thing I wanted to add also is that this campaign was done on the empty and dry messaging. That was the initial messaging for our contamination campaign. And then we did other research that showed not that it wasn't effective. I think this pilot shows that it is effective, but that there was a perception that when we said empty and dry, and especially when we showed our 15 and 30-second ads, that we were telling people to rinse their recycling. And while when we did our first focus groups, we absolutely heard from a lot of Californians that they are rinsing their recycling already. And they said they were doing that to avoid pests, so they didn't get, bugs and other pests in their recycling bin. But we know people were doing that, and it's not something that we discourage, but because of the drought, we had a backlash, especially on our social media or places where people could comment. And then we heard that in the focus groups too. So we did create an alternative messaging that was Shake It Out, and we changed the ads up. We didn't do any reshooting, but we just edited things so that we were saying to shake out the can instead of empty and dry it, because empty and dry in the bin is great, but people were perceiving that we were telling them to dry it because we told them to rinse it. There was a lot of stuff. So this pilot was done on the empty and dry campaign, but we have a Shake It Out campaign that hasn't been tested in this way, but it's most of the same messaging, just a little bit different to show the specific action as shaking something out rather than, something that implies to a lot of people that they need to rinse it and dry it out, which many perceived as wasting water and some just felt was too much effort.
That's a great point to clarify. So we do have one question. We noticed some outdoor advertising in San Diego County last year. Was that part of the campaign, and were the goals the same? That's a great question. We are running a statewide campaign on the empty and dry and Shake It Out messaging. As Maria just mentioned, we started with empty and dry, and then we pivoted. And then we also did food scrap recycling messaging, a campaign called California's Food Fight. All of that information is on irecyclesmart.com, and you'll see the jurisdiction toolkits on there to see the type of resources and assets that we used. And you're right, we did run outdoor messaging throughout the state, and the goals, yes, were basically the same. Before we started the campaign, we did a lot of research, and one of the steps in research is we reached out to haulers, jurisdictions, and material recovery facilities, MRFs, and we asked them what would be the most effective change in recycling, like what would make the biggest difference. And what we heard was that if we could reduce contamination, that would make a huge difference. And so that was really what we felt like was a very universal message for the whole state. No matter where you're at and what you're collecting, you want it to be as clean and dry as possible. So yes, so we thought that would really support local education efforts without conflicting with them in any kind of a way, and get that information out. Okay, where can you find educational material to share with community on our website and social media? That is a great question. I'm going to go ahead and open up our website and I will just walk us through it. Maria, do you have any comments on that question?
No, I was going to suggest or do it myself, so go ahead.
Okay. All right, let me.
And again, if you haven't seen the December 7th video that shows you the entire campaign, we highly recommend it. But the toolkit is there for you to use. You don't need to ask our permission or get permission to use it. If you decide to, if you want to use the turtle and or CalRecycle's logo in your own messaging, that's when we'll need to go through a process to have you present what the messaging is, and we'll have to get legal sign off on that.
Absolutely. So do your part, recycle smart. This is our homepage. Has a lot of information on here. This is a really great video here on why empty and dry helps recycling actually get recycled, especially in our pilot, not our pilot, our focus groups. We had a lot of people really asking about this question. So we did a whole video explaining what happens to recycling if it's not clean. We have our campaign videos here with this cute little kid named Mikey who's shaking it out. On our website, we've got our toolkit up here. So if you click on our toolkit, you'll see a document that's guidelines that basically just explain the rules and how to use it, but then also how to use and place the different types of materials. And then also the instructions, which is where you're going to find the information that Maria was mentioning about applying to use our turtle or our campaign slogans. Otherwise, we have all of our content here organized by type. So we have our videos, our audio, our social media assets, our digital display ads, the out of home. So this is going to be bus tails, as well as our shopping cart ads. Print assets that, we did some direct mailing with our pilot. So on social media, for example, if you click into this particular folder, and let's say you want to do the shake it out content, you'll see that we've got Facebook and Instagram and Twitter content. In our last training, we went over digital advertising. And we did talk a little bit about Twitter, that given the recent changes, we've stopped advertising on Twitter, but we do still run organic content on Twitter. So on our in this folder, you're going to see the various videos that we have developed for our content. And I'm not going to play them because they get a little herky-jerky over Zoom, but we do have them in English and in Spanish. And then we also have our empty and dry in here. And so you can see our content. So these are all formatted and sized correctly for the different platforms. These are all available for you guys to use at any time. So feel free to use that. And then back on our iRecycle Smart website, we've got our various videos here. So these can be used in a few places. They can be used on pre-roll for YouTube. They can be used in digital advertising placements, like on various websites. And then you can also just place them directly on your website as well. We do have radio ads as well that we did. So you can see those in here. We have them in English and in Spanish. So you can download these and use these if you'd like to do a radio campaign. If you're interested in expanding and figuring out the best way to use your budget, that was last week's presentation, and I am about to email that out tomorrow. And so we'll get you on that mailing list as well. So yeah, so here is all of our content on our site. We
Can you
did,
show them the schools page too before you pop off this page at the bottom?
yes, absolutely.
We did create some tools for schools too. So while you may not be directly involved with schools, just so you know, these are a lot of links to different videos that we have, and then there's some other tools. We created this interactive tool for cutting waste, where you can just it's just a visual, so you can see, you can click on it, you can see different ways to cut waste. So it's that source reduction, the reduce from the 3 R's, the reduce from reduce, reuse, recycle. So just showing people ways that they can actually cut waste at home before they even recycle.
Absolutely. Some really good, content here. So on our schools page, we have all these different kinds of videos that can be used. And we did translate quite a few of them into Spanish. We have a dedicated page on food recycling. So we've got our infographic, just really quickly explaining the climate food connection, where food scraps and landfills emit methane, and they harm our climate, but recycling them into compost, biofuel, can benefit our planet. This is our PSA ad. It's a really fun video, so you should definitely watch that. Here's some 101 videos that we did. This is what Maria was talking about earlier: how to fight odors, how to choose the right kind of a bin, and how to manage just taking it from the kitchen to the curbside, what that process looks like. We also have
just sorry to interrupt. Are all 3 of those in the toolkit for people to use if they wanted to put it right onto their social media?
You know what? They are all on YouTube, so they can directly embed the video onto their website via a YouTube link.
All right, we'll see if we can put those in the toolkit, because I know it's a lot better to have people able to play a video on the platform rather than just embedding it.
Okay, yeah, we can get those in. Okay, what food scraps and yard waste can I recycle? This is going to take you to essentially a proper sorting page that has the PSA, and then this is again taking you back to your local info, but giving you some basic guidelines that this is what generally goes into the green bin. These are things you need to check local on: meat and bones, food containers. Some jurisdictions are asking residents to put food scraps into their existing green bin, and their infrastructure has the ability to has the capacity to sort out those plastic bags. Sometimes they're compostable bags, sometimes they're paper bags, sometimes they're plastic bags, but they're telling people to put them in a plastic bag and set it on top. So so we included this here, and then here are things that are definitely not recyclable in the green bin.
I just want to make sure we differentiate that. We're showing people like sometimes what's definitely always recyclable, food that's recyclable, and then what's in, what may or may not be. Can you just link over to the local recycling information? This isn't something we've ever offered before. And while we would prefer to have, a high-tech app, it doesn't really work because we don't have the legislative mandate to get everyone to report their information or hire staff to sort through it all. So this is how we handled it. It's just a basically drop down menus with accordions, and then you can go to your city or your unincorporated county if that's where you live. And that's where we have links. So if you haven't been on our trainings before, this is just something new. If you don't like the link that we've provided, and we collaborated with our local assistance division, and they went through everything, and just let us know if you need a different link. And we've already made a lot of edits based on requests from jurisdictions. So we are always here to help, and if there's anything that we can do to make it correct or better or help you out, just let us know.
Awesome. So I'm just looking at the other questions real fast. And asking about the December 7th meeting. It is available on our YouTube page. And you can contact us at iRecycleSmart@calrecycle.ca.gov if you need to update any of this information. And I see we've got some specific issues here on the specific cities. Can we get a link to the video recording when it's ready? I missed the first part of the webinar. Yes, absolutely. We will be emailing that out. It just takes a day or two for us to get it from our tech team. Then we format it, get it up on YouTube, and then we'll email it out to you. So thank you, Phoenix Smith. We'll get the Carlsbad link updated there. And so let me just give a quick little tour of the other pages on here. So we have the general, what can I recycle? And this is what we call our proper sorting page. And again, as Maria mentioned about organics, this is, definitely what is recyclable. This is what you need to take to a collection site. And this is what you need to check locally about, depending on where you're at. And then this is definitely what is not recyclable. This is actually the #1 page on our website. We decided to go with images of materials because it's much easier for people who speak different languages to understand and interpret than just text. It's also visually interesting and more compelling. So we do have images throughout the site. And then we have our Shake It Out recycling. And again, shake it out, dry it. And all of these different videos in their raw form, the MP4s, are in the toolkit, but they're also on YouTube. So, you can easily share these, on your website or social media, or you can run them, especially on social media. It is better to upload those videos instead of linking to YouTube. And then we have our reduce waste page. We also have this entire website, iRecycle Smart. We have Yo Reciclo Bien. So all of these materials are duplicated over there. So that's just a quick overview of our campaign site.
And I just want to reiterate again, because it looks like we've had several other people join since we started this tour, and I mentioned it before, but on our toolkit page, you can use any of those assets. You do not need to go through a permission process. You can pull things for your social media, or if you are running your own campaign locally, feel free to use this page and use these assets. It's the only time you need to go through and get permission from us on something is if you would like to use the turtle turner, the turtle who helps you turn stuff into other stuff. If you want to use him on any of your assets or anything that you're doing, or the slogan, then please go through the instructions on that toolkit to get a review, so we can review and hopefully approve your use.
Yeah, and just to clarify, as we've had this question before, you can add to the assets that we're giving you here. You can add your logo to them on top of it without permission. But the other way, adding our logo, slogan, turtle to your assets is what requires that permission. But yeah, we welcome you guys to co-brand with us. So you'll see all kinds of assets in different sizes. So if you have digital ads that you want to run, they're all here for you. 100% we recommend doing visual ads that move, like little GIFs like this, because they are catchier. You can see this is a really small ad, and sometimes your budget may only afford smaller ads, and so you want to make sure that they're visually engaging and compelling.
And what we alluded to earlier on, one thing with the 30-second ad, but we talked about in other trainings, is that the videos, the actual videos of 15 and 30-second, those did the best for the click-through rates.
Yeah. Okay. I'm just checking the questions here. Got a couple of specifics. Thank you so much for these different emails. And I'm seeing a question from Christina Noble about Placerville. If you have an updated link for the local recycling info, just go ahead and drop it into the chat for us, and we'll get that updated for you. All right, I don't see any other questions coming in, so we'll just give it another moment. Any questions about, recycling education in general, we'd be happy to answer as well about what we've learned through the campaign, or anything on the pilot. Okay.
Well, if you have any needs, if you would like us to do a video on any topic, anything like that, while the campaign is winding up here this month, we do have folks on our staff who do videos. Some of the videos that we just showed on, the Recycling 101 videos were done through CalRecycle staff. So we're happy to provide you anything that we can to help your campaigns, or help your social media, or anything that's going to help you push out messaging that will be clearer to help Californians recycle correctly, and as much as possible correctly.
Absolutely. All right, well, the final webinar, forgive me, is next Wednesday at 3:00. And this is a really exciting webinar that we're really pleased to share with you. We did something different that CalRecycle hasn't done before with our social media strategy. Especially, our campaign was running partly through COVID, and we decided to really make a very strong effort on social media and digital advertising, especially because a lot of people were, at home, so they weren't necessarily seeing billboards and things like that at the same frequency. So we partnered with social media influencers, and this is a new strategy that we're seeing different government agencies start to do. These are folks who have a smaller audience. We're not talking about millions of followers, but we're talking somewhere between 10 and 75,000 followers. But they have trust and rapport with those followers. And in the influencer strategy, if you've got people with millions of followers, people are going to be influenced, kind of big picture trends, music, makeup, things like that. But in terms of really changing behavior, you need to have what they call mid-tier and micro influencers. So that's what we chose to do. We partnered with a handful of people around California, both in English and in Spanish, to really target and have them demonstrate how to recycle. Again, in the focus groups and the research, what we really heard was that people just wanted to know, just tell us what to do, show us what to do. So we have all these great videos and this content that's run. So next week, we're going to dive into that and just kind of teach you a little bit about what we did. There's probably, especially in certain parts of the state, probably a great number of local influencers that you could partner with. So we'll just give you kind of a tour of what we did and how that worked. You can find our previous recordings on our YouTube channel. I will be emailing them out as well after this meeting. Is there any chance CalRecycle has any campaigns for people that want to do home recycling of organics? We currently don't have a budget designated for home composting, but our team is currently working on a whole bunch of resources to demonstrate how to do home composting. We actually have a photo and video shoot coming up in the next couple weeks where we're going to be demonstrating that. One thing we heard in the research is that that the audience doesn't trust government voices as much, but they do trust academics. So we really want to get some of our scientists, up front talking about how to compost at home. So we will be sending some of that out through our social media, YouTube channels, etc. And you're welcome to lift that material and share it as well. We'll put it on iRecycle Smart too.
We do have one video on our YouTube page that shows you how to compost. We have one that's on why to compost and one that's on how to compost. It's a couple of years old now, but it's still accurate. We're just trying to do something that's a little bit more polished.
Yeah, and we do have a publication that's going to be coming out hopefully in the next couple of weeks on how to build your own compost bin at home. Obviously, you can buy compost bin kits or tumblers, but it's also pretty easy to build one. So we have a new publication with some schematics and instructions on how to do that. So that will be coming as well.
Okay, so again, anyone who has anything that we can help, please feel free to reach out to us in the future. And we've just been so excited to be able to share all of this with you. And we hope to see you at our influencer training next week.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, everyone. I'm going to stop our recording here.